It's the truth about parenting. Something needs to be real for us. The truth is in the raw things that people don't talk about. This journey is not for the weak. Welcome to the Mama Jack podcast.
All
Hi,
right.
Karen. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to be here.
Oh my gosh, it is so nice to have you. I am so excited. I know we have some people watching. In the backstage area because I offered it to the people. We have a Facebook group. So, for those of you listening that don't know, Karen is a part of the research team that researches Sifrim Hitz Weiss. So, that is the genetic condition my daughter has. And I am in a Facebook group, and there's all these parents and people that have it. And we just kind of chat about it all the time and what's going on here and what's going on with your kid. And I've had a podcast episode before. It was me and two other mothers, but now we are speaking to the source. Karin Weiss is here. And thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here. This means so much to us. You have no idea.
Thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to be here and happy to talk a little bit about CHD4 and Sifrim Hitz Weiss and all that.
Hmm.
And so I'll start maybe by telling you a little bit about me.
Hmm.
I'm 46 years old. I live in Israel. I have 3 kids. And I work I'm a pediatrician and clinical geneticist. And so I did my training in pediatrics here in Israel, but genetics I did in the United States in NIH and Johns Hopkins. And during my fellowship there, I worked in the lab in the NIH under Dr. Munke. And as part of my research project, we discovered a few genetic syndromes, and one of them is the syndrome that is related to CHD4 or Sifrim Hitz Weiss. It's a really long name, so I just prefer to call it CHD4
Hmm.
syndrome. It's the same.
Hmm.
And right now, I work as a director of a genetics institute in Rambam Hospital. And most of my work is really clinical work. I see patients, I do genetic testing, and so on. But I also do research, and one of my main research interests is CHT4 because of what I started working on when I was there a few years ago. And so, yeah, I can tell you about that. So, this is we call it like a neurodevelopmental disorder. And that is secondary to pathogenic variants, so mutations in the sequence of the gene CHD4. It's very rare. I know of about 50 patients that I have clinical information about them. I guess there are at least 50 more that I don't know of. Just in Israel, which is a small place, I know about 3 patients. I'm assuming the prevalence, like the incidence, would be maybe 1 in 10,000, 1 in 50,000. So pretty rare condition. And the typical features, clinical features, would be a global developmental delay, which could be both motor and speech delay. And it's usually in the mild to moderate range. And also, some of the patients have congenital anomalies, mainly of the heart and brain, but there could be other types of anomalies. Some patients have facial features that are similar to each other. We can also see issues with vision and hearing, but usually not like severe issues. And some of the patients will have some skeletal findings or hypogonadism, which is decrease in sex hormones and growth hormone deficiency. So that's like in general what we know about the diagnosis. And the thing is that it's very variable. So each child with the CHD4 can be very like it could be very different from one another. This is something that we see also in other genetic syndromes and these types of rare syndromes. And part of the reason is the role of CHD4 and what it's doing in the body. So I wanted to maybe explain a little bit about that. So why what really happens and why we think there is a problem. So CHD4 encodes a protein that is called chromatin remodeler. Chromatin is a protein that is in the cell that is helping the cell to fold and pack the DNA inside the cell, okay, in a certain way. So, you know, the DNA is very long and it needs to be packed in a certain way inside the cell so it functions correctly. And you can imagine that if it's folded in a certain way, so some of the sequences are maybe accessible to other peptides or proteins that try to bind the DNA, and some areas will not be accessible. So the way it's folded is really important for example, if there is a transcription factor that binds the DNA and is responsible for a certain gene to turn on or off, the way that the DNA is folded is really important. Okay. And what we think happens with CG4 is that if there is a mutation, it doesn't act correctly, and there is some interference for this process, especially during the development, during pregnancy. Okay, so during the fetal development, we know that it's really important for certain genes to turn on and off at a certain time. So if there's like it's like a problem with the fine tuning of this process. But there are many other things that can affect this process. So it could be other genes, it could be environmental factors. So in the end, there is CHD4 has an effect, but it's not the only thing that affects the development of the baby, let's say. And so it could be that some patients will be more with more severe issues in terms of the neurologic development and the congenital anomalies and so on, and others will have maybe only very mild issues. And we're not able to really predict who will have a more severe presentation, at least not now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in a way makes it like a complicated condition to study, because this is like a small piece of a very very complex thing that is happening in order for the child to develop normally, let's say.
Mhm. So the oldest
And
person, how old is the oldest person that you know with the CHD4 disorder?
uh, I know of like in the cohorts that we really have more detailed information.
Mhm.
So it's mainly in the 30s,
Okay.
but we know of parents and
Mhm.
even suspected grandparents. So I'm sure there are like old people
Yeah.
that have that have this diagnosis, and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily related to a shortened lifespan. It really depends on if there are other medical problems and how significant they are.
Okay. Okay. So you said you're thinking there's like around 100 people that you know of that have like basically active symptoms, we'll say, like are showing like have the genetic mutation and actually have the certain things that go along with the CHD4, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I assume.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I guess there is a group of people that are connected through Facebook. I'm not
Mhm.
sure how many people are there and how many really have the correct diagnosis, because there is an issue with classifying variants in the sequence of CHD4.
Mhm.
Some we know for sure because we saw them in few patients, or we see that the clinical signs are very much matching like the diagnosis, and we can say that they're pathogenic, but some we're not completely sure.
Mhm.
So and it sometimes requires more research or more cases to come to a conclusion about it.
Yeah.
This is also some of this the research that I'm involved in and trying to understand better which variant or like which mutation is really causing a problem, and maybe some are not,
Mhm.
and not like the diagnosis of CHD4. I was also thinking that I don't know if people want to hear about like the type of follow up or things that you have to do if you get the diagnosis. So
Yeah, for sure. Because I know a lot of us talking to, parents. I mean, my daughter, her name is Harlow. She's had, her and I forget the specialist, the surgeon. We're actually going to see a surgeon because she has ptosis. She had to do the cardiologist. She had to do the neurologist. She had to do dermatology. She had, all of these specialists, and now they're slowly starting to go away. They're not as severe. I think at first it was like, what's going on and can we help? And then, they kind of just threw everything at us because they weren't sure. And of course, the genetics doctor, which I believe
yeah,
they sent her, like, what is it, a report or whatever they took to you guys, and you guys said, like, "Yes, this looks like it's this, CHD4 or Sifrim Hitz Weiss." But I never fully got confirmation that that's what was said because they kinda introduced me, and then the Facebook group kinda introduced me, so I was, like, in the middle, but yes, 100% follow-up. What do you suggest? Because I think most people are realizing this for me, and I've noticed so, basically what happened was I put out my podcast episode, and I will tag Sifram Hitzweiss and, Instagram posts, Facebook posts about my daughter sometimes, and people have reached out to me all over the world. And a lot of people get this diagnosis when, for us, it was Harlow wasn't lifting her head the way she should. So 6 months old was when we got our like diagnosis. And I say this because you haven't actually seen, like, your team hasn't. I don't know if you actually have seen them. Her genetic paperwork and what the genetic doctor wrote up for everything. So, yes, what do you suggest? Like, what people do you suggest they see? Because I know for us, we were hit with this list of like so many people to go see.
yeah. So yeah, I would say the most important thing would be the child development therapies and all that, because that's really the main issue. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, sometimes emotional or psychological therapy, to really try and bring the child to its best degree of functioning and so on, because these things can help. Even if you have like a genetic condition, it doesn't mean that you can't grow out of some of the delays and difficulties, like the motor and the speech difficulties. So, working with the child development or special education and all that can really help. Of course, we don't know, when the child is still young, we don't know what it's going to be
Mhm.
when it's older. It's true for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But we can try our best to give them like the best starting points. And I do know that there are a few cases where some of the children got better at a few things and joined like regular classes as older children and so on. And so I think that's really the most important thing. The other thing is to make sure that we're not missing any congenital anomaly or issue that requires treatment or special surveillance. Okay, so eye exam and hearing, we really recommend it for all the kids that have delays, right? So if there is an issue with hearing or with the vision, so it can be more difficult for the child to develop normally. So we don't want to miss anything. Many of the children with CHD4 require glasses, but it's not, something special. You just have to make sure that it's the correct prescription or whatever. And for the heart, we know that at least 50%, like it depends on the cohort that we tested, but at least 50% have some issue with the structure of the heart. Okay, so there could be a heart defect. Sometimes it can be things that you cannot, hear something on the physical exam. So we recommend to do an echocardiogram at least once during the diagnosis. And if everything is normal, so it's okay. I don't think there is a need to follow up on this. But if there is any findings, so sometimes you need to follow. Sometimes maybe you even have to receive some kind of treatment for it. Um, and I think the other issue is with the hypogonadism and or all the endocrine problems that is less frequent actually for the CHD4. But if there are signs of hypogonadism for boys, it's usually you can see it sometimes even after birth if there is undescended testes or like a um, small phallus. So it's sometimes requires treatment. Otherwise, if there is short stature, so it also requires to test for growth hormone. And we recommend that if there is no signs of an endocrine problem, we recommend to do testing when they reach puberty, just to make sure that there is nothing missing and requires treatment. And ultrasound of the kidney is also recommended. It's not like I don't know, it's not an urgent test to do, but it's better to do it at some point just to make sure because sometimes there could be kidney malformations. And regarding the brain MRI, it's really a decision with the neurologist. Okay, so it depends on the neurological examination. And although many of the children did have a brain MRI and there were some findings, but in most cases, it's not something that requires treatment. So it's really a decision that you have to do with the neurologist if they recommend. So of course, you should do it. Otherwise, it's not mandatory. I think these are the main things that should be done if there is a diagnosis.
Yeah. So somebody was asking, is there a registry to compare common symptoms right now? They were hearing if there's a registry they can send
Yeah.
their kids' charts into. I can also provide that information in the show notes. Like you don't have to go into it if there is a place. I can put it in there so people have access to that. Um, is that kind of a way that you're also researching is just by comparing, the charts that do come in?
Okay. Yeah. So there is a registry that we are in contact with. It's called Human Disease Genes. It's a group from the Netherlands,
Mhm.
and they have it for different conditions. And there's also a page for CHD4. I will give you all the
Okay.
information. There is a area for professionals and an area for families, and families can fill a questionnaire.
Okay.
I think last time I checked, not so many people joined it. It will be really nice if people who can find the time and give information about their children. Right now, we're working on a publication on another group of patients that underwent testing for DNA methylation. So we have a little bit more patients to add to the literature in terms of the all the clinical findings and all that. But in the future, I do plan to do a more like a bigger study to try, maybe really with your help, to get information from more children, so we can have like a big number. So the bigger the number, the more accurate the clinical picture we can get. So if we can get like 100 kids that have the diagnosis and then show all the clinical findings, we can maybe find out about like a better assessment of the prevalence of different problems, and also maybe find out about more rare things that can happen. We did find, like in our last study, that there are two cases with where the gut is malrotated, and this is like a really rare thing. So we think it could be related to CHD4. So this is like an example of what you can get from getting information on more kids.
Yeah.
And also adults, because adults, it's also interesting to see adults with this.
Yeah, and a lot of adults only found out because their kid had
Yeah.
something and then they got the genetic testing and they were like, "Oh, wow, okay, yeah." I mean, it makes sense, or no symptoms whatsoever their whole life. It was just, things still happen. Me and my husband
Yeah.
both got genetically tested. Neither of us had the gene. So Harlow is new. She's
Yeah.
our new
I
little
recently
baby.
met like a really lovely family. When it's like it's a mother and daughter, and they both have it.
Mhm.
And the mother, it's really interesting because she told me that when she was a child, she had so many issues with learning and difficulties reading and writing and so on. And now it's like much better.
Mhm.
So I was really, it was very nice to hear. And she's, functioning really well and taking care of her daughter. So yeah, it gives you some hope
It
that
does.
so maybe some of it can get better with time.
It
Yeah.
does, because that's always the question, right? Especially whenever you land this like diagnosis and they're 6 months old. I know for me, when I found out, I was like, okay, well, we wait and we wait and we wait and we wait. She's
Yeah.
like 2.5 almost right now. But there is hope in all of this. And that is beautiful because I don't think a lot of us were sure of that. A lot of us, we didn't really hear that things could get better over time. And with the right interventions, the kids can learn, and have their little ways. So, another question, autism. Like, there's a lot of autism. Is that kind of just separate, or does that just kind of come with the symptoms that the CHD4 has
Yeah.
anyways? Like, what do you think with autism involving with the CHD4 disorder?
So, from the cases that I collected information on, autism is more frequent compared to the general population,
Okay.
but it's not like a typical finding for CHD4.
Okay.
Okay, it's not like most patients with CHD4 do not have autism.
Okay.
Um, so I'm not sure if it's related. I'm also suspecting that it could be related to certain types of mutations.
Mhm.
So maybe some mutations are more associated with autism and other not. But in general, right now, what we say is that there is an increased risk compared to general population, but it's not necessarily going to happen if you like receive the diagnosis at an early stage and there is no signs of autism, so there's no reason to suspect that it's going to happen.
And then there is a question which I'm gonna read to you because I don't quite understand it, but I have a feeling you're gonna understand it. It is,
Okay.
why is the episign being used by geneticists as the gold standard in diagnosing the syndrome? Several of our members, my child included, have been told they, in fact, don't have the syndrome despite having the genetic variation and demonstrating a multitude of the common presentations.
Okay, so episign, that is actually related to the last study that we did. Episign is a test that looks at the DNA methylation, not at the DNA sequence. So it turns out that if you test for the DNA methylation, and DNA methylation is really, there are like parts of our DNA that a methyl, like a compound, is contacted to. Okay. And it's kind of like a sign for the body to turn on or turn off certain regions in the DNA. Okay. It's called like epigenetic, not like genetic is really the sequence, and things that are on the sequence is called epigenetic.
Okay.
And there are groups in the world that studied this for several years, and they found that for different syndromes, you can find like a pattern that is compatible with the specific diagnosis. And sometimes it's helpful if you're not sure about the diagnosis, if there's like a mutation that you're not sure is disease causing or not, to look at this pattern and see, does it fit the diagnosis of CHD4? Does it fit the diagnosis of many other syndromes that they know to test? But this is in no way like considered a gold standard or like a final diagnosis. This is just like a tool that can aid in cases where you're not sure about the diagnosis. Okay.
Okay.
And we did find that CHD4 has an identifiable methylation pattern, but it doesn't work for all the mutations we have. It works for some of them. So if the test comes out positive, I'm pretty certain that it's very supportive of the diagnosis. But if it comes out negative, I can't rule out the diagnosis for sure. It stays in the area of the uncertain. Okay. But in general, in genetics, when we see a variant that we're not sure what it's doing because we don't have enough criteria that can tell us that this is disease causing at a probability of more than 90%, it's something that we see a lot in genetics. And in the end, most of these variants of uncertain significance, they turn out to be benign. They turn out to be not disease causing, just statistically looking, like generally, because there are many variations in our DNA sequence that we don't understand, and they're probably not doing anything. So if you get a result that says variant of uncertain significance, it kind of leaves you like in the middle. Like it could be that it's explaining that it's a diagnosis, but it could also be that it's not doing anything. And here is the role of the geneticist or the neurologist to say, okay, I think that this is compatible, or I don't know, or I think that it's not. Okay, it's kind of like the clinical experience and all that. And sometimes also the only thing we can do is just wait, because as more and more people get tested, we get more information on healthy variation, like on normal variation, and on variation that is related with disease. So yeah, it's like complicated, but like the episign is just supposed to help. It's not like the last thing that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always said, basically, Harlow's diagnosis was for early intervention because she's 6 months old. So instead of me going nuts and being like, oh my gosh, is she going to be able to live on her own? Is she going to be able to go to college? Is she going to be able to do, and have my mind spinning in 80,000 ways? I'm like, no, we know what this could be. So we're going to make sure if she needs help in this, she needs help in that, she needs help in that, it's early intervention right now. And that's all we can do. And that's all we have been doing. She's 2.5. I just talked to her OT and her PT, and they said she's like 6 months to a year behind, as far as like standards are concerned.
Yeah.
So, that I feel like is pretty common. And that's exactly what happened with us. It was a variant of unsignificance. They didn't know. And then they went through their whole genetic checklist. And like I said, I think they sent it to you, and you guys were like, yeah, with everything that she's checking off, it sounds like it. So that's how we got it. So to be clear, CHD4 disorder and Sifrim Hitz Weiss, same thing.
Yeah, like it could be that in the future, we can find out that maybe different type of mutations in this gene, because it's a really big gene and it's kind of complex.
Yeah.
maybe different mutations cause a different type of clinical findings. And so then there may not be, because Sifrim Hitz Weiss is like the description, like the original description
Okay.
of the kids that had global developmental delay and the congenital anomalies and so on. And maybe in the future, if we find out that some mutations cause like a different clinical presentation, so then CHD4 would be like a more general term for any case with a pathogenic variant in CHD4. It doesn't matter what type of phenotype
Mhm.
or like clinical issues.
Okay.
But right now, it's like the same thing.
Okay. So you mentioned me helping out with finding people to fill something out. Do you already have something in place for that? Or is this an idea that you're trying to gather for yourself? Because whatever you need, I am more than happy to do whatever I can over here with that. You just let me know what I can do and it's done.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like right now there is the Human Disease Gene website that I can send to you, and that's already ready
Yeah.
for you to fill. For the other study that I was mentioning, not right now,
Yeah.
but I think we will finish with this study about the DNA methylation, and then we will have time to think about planning like the larger cohort. And we will also have to make sure that there are no like duplicates,
Mhm.
because maybe some of you I already have your information through your physicians,
Yeah.
so I will need to know who, because I don't have the names, I only have the physician. So yeah, that will be in the future, but right now there is something that you can could be really helpful, to log into the human disease genes and add information there. You were asking about research and other things that we do. So we are working on trying to understand the effect of different mutations, like to see if different mutations cause different problems. And also, we're starting to work with trying to generate neurons that carry the mutation. So it's called induced pluripotent cells. We can take blood sample or skin biopsy from a patient with CHD4, turn the cells into stem cells, and then turn them into neurons. Okay, and then we can see, because the problem is we don't have access to the patient's brains to study it, but that's really the most interesting part, right? To see how CHD4 is working there, and maybe there is something that we can do to change, like thinking about future treatment or so. But first we need to see how the neurons look like with the mutation, and so this is something that probably will take a lot of time, but we're now really working on that to generate the cells and see what information it can give us.
That's insane. That's amazing. That's so cool. I love hearing about all of this stuff, even when it's not connected to my own little precious daughter, my little unicorn, I call her. I say, everybody with this condition, they're all the little unicorns because it's so rare and it pops up and it's so beautiful. And we really have made a big community on. I mean, it's not big because there's only 100, I think now there's like close to 150, if not 150 people.
Oh,
But that's not
wow.
everybody that
Okay.
has it. It's parents, grandparents,
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I said, I'll put the link in the description for this podcast for people that are not a part of the Facebook group that just so happen to find the podcast. And then I will put that in the Facebook group and ask that everybody can fill it out when they have time. So they can have all of that information. And yes, when it's time to do anything, just let me know. I'm here. I could do whatever you need me to do. I podcast and I'm a stay-at-home mom. The only thing I'm doing is taking Harlow to therapies and her brother to therapies. So I have the time to help you on this side. So in any way possible, I can definitely do that. And I just want to thank you so much for doing this because it's just so scary whenever you have this little baby and then they're diagnosed with something and then they're like, oh, it's rare, and you can't help but think all of these things, it's like it kind of overtakes you. And I know some of the other parents and I, we talk, and it's like it comes in waves, right? Like you get used to it, you get used to it, you get used to it. And then all of a sudden you get a wave where you're like, whoa, okay, well, they're not learning as quick, or they're not. But some of the information you gave us today, I feel like creates a lot of hope in the group, because I was told that what she was born with is what she will carry on. It won't get any worse, but you need to wait until she develops, right? So, like, basically, what's going to happen is going to happen. You can't change it. But then hearing that some people have had it and they, have, you know, gotten better at reading, speech, all of these things, that creates a lot of hope in the community, I feel like. And it does create a lot of clarity with what is related to the CHD4 and what is not. I mean, I'm sure there are some things that you find together with the CHD4 commonly. Is there anything that, like any other genetic mutation, that kind of pops up beside it a lot that you've noticed?
Like together with other disorders?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no, it's
oh no.
not related to any other problem.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like it could be sometimes some people have more than one genetic problem. It
yeah.
can happen, but it's not like if you have CHD4, you're prone to more things. That's not. I wanted to tell you about like the thing with the hope is really what I was trying to say because I also try to do it in my clinic to give the families hope, especially if it's like an early stage diagnosis, because you really don't know how it's going to play out. Like the doctors, they can't really know what the future will be. So I think it's really important to give hope because we know it's very variable. We know some kids have mild problems. I guess everybody with CHD4 is like special, requires more special attention, more special education, and so on. But there is a very big range in terms of the difficulties that they can encounter. And you can only do what you can do. Some things are out of your hands as parents, right? Like there are things that you cannot fix, of course. And some kids will have severe problems, and it's of course not anyone's fault because it just happens. But really, when it's still early and when the baby is still small and you don't know what's going to be, so it's better to be hopeful and to believe that it can get better, and in some cases it does. So yeah.
Yeah. And we have people like you working to see what you can do to treat, if there's anything that we can do to treat even more severe cases in the future, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. Honestly, thank you so much for the work you do. And it is, and you're constantly answering questions from parents. I see it all the time. And that means so much to us, just so you know. Like every little question you answer, every big question coming from a parent, it just eases our mind and gives us more clarity in what's happening. And I just have to thank you so much for that, because I feel like we're truly lucky that, we have you to contact, because not a lot of conditions and, disorders, we don't have a direct contact to a person that is researching and actively in the know about everything that's happening with it. So I just really wanted to thank you from me, and I'm sure all the rest of the parents and, the grandparents that are finding out that their children have these and their grandchildren, because you are a beautiful person for doing what you're doing. And it really, really, really warms our hearts to hear anything about it, because it's such a mystery. And like I said, yes, anything you need from me, please contact me. You have my contact information. If we need to start something here, let me know how to do that, who to
Yeah, sure.
contact, and I'm your girl. I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of other parents would be willing to help as well. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can get Arlo in
It's
here to
nice
say
to
hi.
have a good group.
Oh, okay. Hold on. She's out there. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab her so she can say hi to you real quick.
Ah, okay.
Say hi,
Oh, hi.
Arlo.
I'm Karin.
Can you say hello? Oh yeah, lights on. Say hi. Say thank you. Say thank you. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time to do this.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you again.
Hope to have interesting things for you in the future.
Sounds good. Welcome to the end of another episode of the Mama Jack Real Raw Parenting Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember, parenting is a journey filled with ups and downs, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. The Mama Jack Podcast is here to provide you with support, guidance, and real life stories from fellow parents who are navigating the challenges of raising children. If you have any questions, topics you'd like me to cover, or stories you'd like to share, please reach out to me. I love hearing from my listeners and incorporating your experiences into future episodes. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Podpage, all under the Mama Jack, TheMamaJac. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can create a supportive community of real, raw parents. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with laughter, tears, and everything in between. Until next time, keep being the amazing parent that you are.